So this is the iPhone 14 Pro Max versus the Pixel 7 Pro, and I just wanted to talk about them, see how they compare, and whether or not you should be thinking about getting the iPhone this time around, or maybe switching it up and going for a Pixel, or vice versa. So let's just go ahead and talk about them. Starting off the design, they couldn't be any more different. So it's definitely going to come down to your own taste, to your own preferences when it comes to the feeling, the look, the design of the device. So looks wise, I think both of them look relatively nice. They don't look cheap. They don't feel cheap either. They feel pretty premium for the most part and look premium. Of course, again, depends on your own taste. And of course, in the colors as well. I have the silver white colorway on the iPhone versus the hazel colorway on the Pixel. I think both look very clean and nice. I really like the hazel on the Pixel 7 Pros just because the gold aluminum frame, I can't really tell if it's gold like it's named or if it's silver. Like it really depends on the lighting, how it hits it. I just think it looks really clean overall. I liked it more than last year's Pixel 6 Pro that had a black visor. But again, it's up to you. And I also do like the visor. The main reason is because if you put it down without a case on a flat surface, it's gonna lay flat. It's not gonna rock at all versus the iPhone 14 Pro Max with the big lenses, definitely bigger than last year's. It rocks quite a bit when you're on a table. Now you can fix both issues because you can use a case. And in fact, I use a case all the time. So while the design is clean on both of them, I'm always rocking a case, which ends up feeling the same to me when I'm using them day to day. The weight though is a little bit different where the iPhone 14 Pro Max is on the heavier side with the Pixel 7 Pro being just a little bit lighter. But say you're not using a case, which one would feel better in hand? I personally would go towards the Pixel 7 Pro just because it's curved all around. It's got a curved edge, curved sides, curved display on the front, curved display on the back. It is Corning Gorilla Glass Victus, I think, on the back. Both of them are glass, so they might break after a couple hard falls, especially on concrete or something. But I feel that the Pixel 7 Pro feels a lot more comfortable in the hand because of those soft curved edges versus the iPhone 14 Pro Max is more on the flat, squared off kind of design. So it does feel a little bit sharp and some people may like that. It does feel like a dense, heavy, bricky phone in my opinion. Now, it's not bad. It's just for me, I prefer more of the feeling of the Pixel 7 Pro. The sides are glossy and the back is matte on the iPhone versus all glossy all the time, all around on the Pixel 7 Pro. So you can get fingerprints on both of them. But again, I use a case. Personally, I recommend dbrand's grip cases. They are so grippy and so nice. I used to use Spigen all the time. This isn't sponsored or anything like that, but I just like fell for dbrand's marketing and stuff like that. But the grip cases, they're grippy and they feel very nice. I won't go too in depth with them, but they are expensive, but I like them. If you're looking for a really good case, I definitely recommend dbrand's grip case. Now, as far as like hardware buttons and ports and all that stuff, you have USB-C at the bottom on the Pixel 7 Pro versus Lightning on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. You have dual fire-in speakers, which both of them honestly sound pretty good for an average person like me who just uses it for watching content, listen to videos, or listen to music and just browsing on social media and stuff like that. I think both speakers sound really good, but the iPhone definitely sounds just a hair bit louder and a little bit better well-rounded because the top earpiece and the bottom speakers both sound equally about good versus on the Pixel 7 Pro, the bottom speaker is definitely the louder and more on-feeder speaker because if you cover up the bottom one, the top one just sounds a little bit quieter and a little bit maybe tinnier, not as like powerful as the bottom speakers. So with that said though, both of them do sound pretty good overall for me. And the buttons on the Pixel 7 Pro are all on one side and they're very clicky buttons and responsive buttons. I really like them, but again, they are on the same side. So it is a little bit confusing sometimes because the power button is above the volume rocker. On the iPhone 14 Pro Max, something that I really like is that they're on separate sides and also they're bigger buttons. So the power button is pretty big and the volume rocker is two separate buttons, one for up and one for down. The mute switcher is also really convenient. So if you're ever in a situation where you forget to mute your device or you want to put your device on ring, you can just easily do so without having to physically unlock your device. And one thing that may or may not be controversial to you is that there's no physical SIM card slot on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. If you're a reviewer or someone who travels a lot, this might be annoying. Like for example, for me, I guess I'm a reviewer, so I constantly switch devices, so I can't just pop the SIM out and pop it into another device. I have to transfer this eSIM to another eSIM or transfer this eSIM to a physical card and then wait for that card to be shipped to me. It's a little bit annoying because my carrier, which in this case is Mint Mobile, they charge me for eSIMs after I think 3 of them. So I don't get unlimited eSIMs. I also don't get unlimited physical cards. So I have to wait for that card to be shipped to me and I have to pay for that SIM card. So It's a bit annoying, but if you're not a reviewer, you don't travel a lot, and you just use one phone throughout your whole year or for many years, then you're not going to have an issue. The eSIM process for me for Mint Mobile was very simple. Just use the app. If you don't have Mint Mobile, then get Mint Mobile. I'll leave a link down in the description. But it's a very simple process, at least for me. And both phones are IP68 water and dust resistant rated, so if you get splashed with some water, take it in the shower, you will be just fine on either device. As far as the displays, on the Pixel 7 Pro, you are going to be getting a 6.7-inch 120Hz 1440p AMOLED display, versus on the iPhone it is going to be a Super Retina XDR, just under 1440p 120Hz 6.7-inch display. What does that mean? Basically, both devices are really good. So the displays on both of them are going to be really nice, good quality, sharp and colorful. For the most part, decently vibrant. I would say the Pixel 7 Pro is a little bit more vibrant. You do have the option of using either adaptive or natural. Personally, I go for just adaptive because it adds a little bit more color to the display. But either way, both of them I think look really good for watching content. Things look just overall good clarity and good quality and good color. Honestly, don't know how else to describe them besides saying they're both pretty good. And the 120Hz is also really nice for just scrolling around, whether it be on the stock OS. The stock OS always looks really clean and smooth when you're scrolling around. But when you're using apps and whatnot, I did notice that sometimes on the Pixel 7 Pro, it looked a little bit, I wouldn't say choppy, but you could like see a little bit of a resistance in the refresh rate. I guess you could say like the refresh rate went down maybe just a little bit. It might be just the app itself that does not optimize the app, but that's the only thing I noticed, because otherwise, for the most part, both of them are smooth and great displays. I also noticed that the Pixel 7 Pro, on top of being just a little bit more vibrant, it did look a little bit more brighter when you're inside. When you set them both to 100% brightness and you're indoors, it felt like the Pixel 7 Pro just looked brighter. But once you went outside, the iPhone got a lot brighter. So I guess that has to do with what the iPhone's doing with the software, limiting the brightness when you're indoors, and then once you go outdoors, it increases the brightness. I think the Pixel 7 Pro might allow you to go to its peak brightness the whole way. I could be wrong, but that's what it felt like to me. Now, as far as like their intrusions and stuff like that, first, on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it is a flat display, as I already mentioned. So that means that you're not going to get any kind of glare on the edges or anything like that. Plus, you can easily install a tempered glass screen protector, unlike on the Pixel 7 Pro. That is a little bit of a curve, so you do get a little bit of glare sometimes if light hits it at a certain angle, and it's much tougher to install a tempered screen protector, but you can install like a flex or in plastic like TPU screen protector. Personally, I'm not a fan of those protectors, so I always skip out on a protector on any device that has any kind of curve on it. And as far as the bezels on the iPhone, it's an even bezel throughout the whole display, versus on the Pixel 7 Pro that has a little bit of a thicker chin compared to the rest of its bezels, but the top and the side bezels are pretty clean and pretty small. I also want to note here that the display on the Pixel 7 Pro is more box-to-box looking, versus on the iPhone, it's more rounded in the corners. The Pixel's corners are also rounded, but not as aggressively rounded, so I feel like you lose just a little bit of content in those corners, not too much, and honestly it won't really make much of a difference, but I still wanted to point it out there. And of course, that pill cutout, there's no argument about it. It intrudes into your display a lot more. If you're watching content that has a certain aspect ratio, it's definitely going to start to creep in a little bit more compared to the Pixel 7 Pro's little camera cutout. It's almost acting like a mini notch sometimes, even when you're not pinched in to zoom. And then once you do pinch in to zoom, you're going to notice, no doubt about it, the pill cutout definitely cuts in a lot more. So there's no argument about it. But of course, the reason it has that pill cutout is because it's got Face ID, versus on the Pixel 7 Pro, you have 2D facial recognition. So comparing those two, without a doubt, the Face ID is much better. Not only is it more secure, but it's more reliable, easier to use because it can recognize you in like very, very low light situations. In dark situations, the Pixel 7 Pro doesn't do a bad job, but you can always count on the Face ID to recognize you. And one of my favorite features here on both devices actually is that you can keep your notifications locked, and then once it recognizes you, it'll unlock those notifications and show you those notifications. The only complaint I have about this is on the Pixel 7 Pro, I wish the animations were just a little bit nicer. Like if you look at the animations on the iPhone 14 Pro Max for when it unlocks my notifications, it looks a lot cleaner. And of course, the Pixel 7 Pro does have the under-display fingerprint sensor, which is much improved from last year, so it's pretty fast and pretty reliable. So the fact that I have the option of facial recognition and the fingerprint sensor is very convenient in my opinion, and beats out just having just simply Face ID. If I had to choose between them just based off biometrics, I would go with the Pixel 7 Pro any day. As far as the performance, both of them are honestly really good for your day-to-day usage. The iPhone does have an A16 Bionic chip with 6 GB of RAM versus the Pixel 7 Pro that has a Google Tensor G2 chip with 12 GB of RAM. So like I said, both of them are honestly really good. For the average person, you're not going to notice a difference at all. The only time you'll probably ever notice a difference is if you're a very heavy user and you use the camera a lot and or play games a lot. Because if you're just browsing around, if you're just scrolling around, texting, typing, searching stuff on the internet, browsing around on social media, you're not going to see any kind of difference. Both of them are very smooth, very snappy, open up apps at about the same speed. If anything, they might be a little bit different sometimes, but honestly, you're not going to have any kind of issue when it comes to your basic day-to-day performances. And for the most part, all the apps seem to be well optimized on both devices, such as social media apps. The camera part is definitely the biggest optimization thing, and for the most part, both of them seem to be well optimized. For me, Snapchat is one of the biggest things, and that seems to be pretty well optimized on both of them. Of course, like features and stuff, iPhones typically get that first, but for the most part, the apps run really well. Now, like I said, when you're doing more heavy, intensive stuff, I did notice that the Pixel 7 Pro did tend to slow down a little bit in performance, and it also got a little bit warmer to the touch. So it wasn't to the point where it was hot, and the iPhone definitely got hot as well, but the Pixel 7 Pro definitely just felt a bit warmer. So for example, when I was playing some games, I felt like the performance on the Pixel 7 Pro, and of course, I was setting both settings to very high on both of them because I really wanted to push them, and they both could handle them. But the Pixel 7 Pro just started to lag a little bit and saw some like choppiness here and there, versus the iPhone stayed very good in the performance throughout the whole time. Like there was like no issue at all. But again, that all depends if you're going to do that. I also noticed when you're taking a lot of photos and videos, eventually on the Pixel 7 Pro, I did notice that on the preview, the refresh rate just dropped. Like you could see, like it looked like it was lagging. It was just a lot of choppiness. But when you actually saw the video and stuff, it looked just fine. So in the preview, it may look a little bit whack with a lot of like noise and stuff like that. But once it processes, once you let it do its thing, you will see that it looks just fine. You can also do some kind of multitasking on both devices, and both of them are able to handle them with no problem. The only multitasking you can do on the iPhone is really just picture-in-picture. With the Pixel 7 Pro, you can also do picture-in-picture, but you can also split the screen. And I remember last year I was having a ton of like issues with the bugs and all that kind of stuff on splitting the screen, but now I barely use it sometimes because I honestly forgot I had that feature, but it seems to be working much better now. So both of them can do your basic stuff and can do a little bit more. But if you want the best peak performance, like no issue, no excuses, the most consistent and fluid experience possible, then I would say get the iPhone, because the performance just felt like it was constantly performing very well the whole time. Which pretty much leads into my day-to-day experience with like the software and stuff like that. What's different, what really makes the iPhone an iPhone, and what really makes the Pixel a Pixel, and which one would benefit you in the day-to-day. So for the iPhone, I always felt like it was more on a more professional and kind of business-like experience. Like what you get is what you see. You're not gonna get anything crazy experimental and stuff like that, versus on the Android side, there's always a ton of experimental stuff. Like they kept the stuff clean and simple for you to use. On the Pixel, I kind of think it's similar, but the aesthetics of the actual software is more friendly, like more, it seems more, I don't want to call it childish, but more on that side. So the reason I say that is because if you look at the aesthetics of both OSs, like I said, the iPhone just looks computer-like, looks business-like, professional-like. nothing crazy looking. On the Pixel, it's got those like thicker padded elements where the quick settings look pretty thick. The volume rocker is pretty thick. Just the colorful material UI experience where the colors of your wallpaper match your whole system UI. So it's up to you to decide which look you prefer. Of course, on the Pixel 7 Pro, you can install other launchers like Nova Launcher, Microsoft Launcher. There's a ton of launchers you can install, but I usually stick with stock launchers and just go with that. So that's how I noted the actual aesthetics and look of the software. But actual practical use, both of them are honestly very simple to use. So if you're choosing between them, if you've had an iPhone before and you've never had a Pixel or any kind of Android, or if you have a Pixel right now and you've never used an iPhone before, I honestly think that switching between them, it won't be that big of a change. Of course, there are some big differences, but as far as their simplicity, both of them are simple that you'll definitely learn and catch on to both of them pretty easily in my opinion. So one of the major things with the iPhone is that on the lock screen, you now have the ability to customize it a lot more than you can on the Pixel now. So the lock screen on the Pixel 7 Pro, the only main thing you can change is just changing the size of the clock. And that's pretty much it. Of course, you have the option of turning on the always on display, which in this case is just showing the time and your notifications. On the iPhone, you do have the ability to use the new always on display, which literally looks like the display is always on. I'm not a fan of always on displays in general, just because I use smartwatches, so I just rely on my notifications because of the watches. So I don't need the always on displays on, but you have that option if you wanted to. Personally, I'm not a fan of either, like I said, but it is what it is. But the lock screen customization on the iPhone is pretty cool because you have the ability to add some depth to some of your wallpapers. You can change the clock style. You can change your widgets. In fact, the fact that you can even add widgets and your own different widgets is pretty cool. I also like that you can set focus modes on your wallpapers. I've never used any kind of focus modes on any of my phones. I know the Pixel does have a couple focus modes and other Androids do as well, but I've never used them before. And just because the wallpapers are embedded with your focus modes just makes me want to use the focus modes a lot more on the iPhone. And once you land on the home screen on both of them, they couldn't be any more different. So on the Pixel, you have the ability to move apps anywhere. On the iPhone, you have to keep the apps towards the top. So you have to download some kind of third-party app like I did on the iPhone recently so that I can have some invisible widgets so that I can force all my apps to the bottom. The reason I do this is because I like to keep my home screens minimalistic and on the sides keep some widgets. That way I can just not get distracted by a ton of apps, a ton of stuff, and just hop into whatever app I want to, and also keep the apps lower so it's easier to reach with one hand. The only thing with the Pixel is that you can't move apps onto the at-a-glance widget or remove the at-a-glance widget, but I would take that any day over not being able to move apps freely anywhere on the iPhone. The iPhone does have stackable widgets still, which is pretty nice, so you can stack a bunch of widgets to again keep your home screen clean and minimal. The Pixel also has the Google Discover page on the left-hand side, so when you swipe to it, you can get your Google News feed with all kinds of articles. This is kind of cool. I don't actually use it. I've always wanted it, but I actually never use it in real life. So I feel like it's more of a distraction of anything because you might just find yourself browsing too much or spending too much time browsing and then getting distracted from your day-to-day activities. On the iPhone, when you swipe to the left, you get just your widgets bar, or just your widgets section, I should say. And both of them have some kind of app library / app drawer. So on the Pixel 7 Pro, you just have a drawer of all your apps, no folders, can't really change it up. You just have all your apps there. Versus on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you have the app library, which basically creates folders for you to store your apps. I really like being able to have folders as my app library, but I don't like that the iPhone or iOS restricts me from making my own folders. So it uses its own AI to try and figure out which app should go in which folder. Usually does a pretty good job of where to put apps, but sometimes I wish I could just move an app from a certain folder to a different folder because I think it belongs in a different folder. But either way, you can create your own folders on your home screen if you wanted to and just turn off the whole app library. And then the notification center / control center versus the notifications / quick settings section of Android, both of them get the job done. I honestly don't have any issue with either of them. I got used to both of them. Once you learn how to access them and what they do and how to organize it, you honestly have no issue with either of them. I think, again, it comes down to the looks, I guess, like which one you think looks nicer. But the one thing I do like of notifications on the iPhone is that you can set up the notification summary, which basically allows you to get just a summary of all your notifications instead of being spammed with constant notifications throughout your whole day. So if there's like apps that you don't need to receive the notification as soon as you get it, just put it into that notification summary, and then at some point in the day, however you have it set up, it'll send you a summary of all your notifications. And a cool feature that both of them have, that if it's too high up, if you have small hands, turn on the back tap feature. So on the Pixel, just double tap on the back and it'll bring down the whole notification / quick settings center, versus on the iPhone you have two options, double tap and triple tap. So in that case for me, I have one set up for control center and one set up for notification center. So I can just double tap or triple tap the back of the phone and it'll bring it down without me having to reach all the way up to the top of the display. And then both of them also have their own individual ecosystems, that being the iOS / Apple ecosystem versus the Google / Android ecosystem. And honestly, it's really going to come down to, unfortunately, which one you're already in. And if you're not too deep into one, then you could easily make the switch and kind of work with both of them. But if you're already too far deep into one, it's kind of hard to leave one and go to the other one. But it's still definitely possible in my opinion. So with iOS, you get that whole iMessage ecosystem, you get AirDrop, Find My, you get FaceTime. If you've used that before and you rely on that all the time, then, you know, it is what it is, you're stuck into that. But I definitely think you should still consider the fact that Android or Google has their own ecosystem as well. It may not be as fine-tuned and as simple and clean as it is on iPhone, but it still works really well. You have the same similarity as AirDrop. You have RCS messaging. You have dual / meetings, whatever it is now that it's called for face chat or video chat, I should say. And Google also has seamless connections with other devices such as smart home stuff, earbuds, and even their new Pixel Watch and whatnot. Of course, iPhone has that as well, and I'm pretty sure it probably works a lot better with the whole Apple ecosystem of other Apple devices, of AirPods, MacBooks, and tablets, and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that Google definitely needs to work on. Of course, they are building that and working on that as well, but Apple already has that set up currently at this moment. So with daily experience with the ecosystem, I would still give the edge to the Apple ecosystem over the Google / Android ecosystem. It's still a great ecosystem, but it may not be up to par yet with the Apple ecosystem. And as far as security and safety, both of them have pretty good security when it comes to their OS. Of course, it's like up to you, kind of like, do you trust Google or do you trust Apple and iOS and stuff like that? I personally trust them both, and I think security has been great on both of them. They give you all kinds of features to make sure you know that your camera's on, that your mic is on and all that stuff, and your GPS is on as well. I think on the iPhone with iOS does that. And both of them also have the crash detection, so if you get caught in some kind of accident, by using sensors and your mics and all that, it can tell when you're in an accident and get help for you. The iPhone does have the satellite connection stuff where if you don't have service, you can still potentially get help by, calling some kind of emergency service number. But the one thing that Android 13 has on the Pixel 7 Pro that iOS does not have on the iPhone 4D Pro Max is the Google Assistant versus Siri. Now, I'm not going to get into a Google Assistant versus Siri competition and battle here, but the features, the AI features that the Pixel have is amazing. Of course, some of those features include a dictation feature, speech to text. So translating your own speech to text is really fast and actually pretty accurate using the Google Tensor and the Google AI features. You also have the ability to use the language translation stuff, so you can translate what's on your screen to match your language. But the best AI features, in my opinion, are the phone features. Those being the hold for me and then the screen calling features. Google Assistant will literally answer calls for you. So one, I have it set up for when spam calls or unknown numbers call me, or a number I don't have in my contacts call me. So if someone like that calls me, the Google Assistant won't even ring my phone. It will just say, it will pop up a notification saying, right now there's a number being screen called. So I don't even get bothered by it. It just does it all in the background. And then if the person leaves a voicemail, or in this case, it's a transcript of what they said, because it'll say, this is the Google Assistant, please leave your name and what you're calling about. And then it'll tell me, hey, this is what they're calling about. And boom, there we go. But I can actually screen call if I see the notification. So if the call comes in when I'm using my phone, I can choose the option of screen calling, and then boom, I have the option of seeing what that user or other person on the other line is saying. And there's actually predefined questions that the Google Assistant has. So why are you calling? I can't understand you. What is your name and all that stuff? You can ask those questions, and the other person, if they stay on the line, they can answer those questions, and you can see a live transcript of what they're saying, which is so useful. This is literally an assistant in your pocket. So not only is this a phone, it's an actual assistant. I think this is really cool, and one of the best features that Pixel and Android 13 has over the whole competition. Imagine this came to Samsung devices. Imagine this came to the iPhone. People would just eat it up. I think it's a very great feature, very useful in my opinion. But at the end of the day, with the software and all that stuff and the user experience, I think both user experiences are very simple, easy to get the hang of and learn. It just comes down to those small specific features, whether or not you think you would benefit from the Apple ecosystem, the Google ecosystem, or the AI features, which I think is very useful for the average person. You don't have to be a super techie person to appreciate features like that. But as far as like the support, with iPhone, you are going to get a little bit more support. I think about roughly 5 to 6 years of OS updates, versus the Pixel 7 Pro should get you 3 years of major OS updates and then 5 years of security updates. So yeah, still a long support here, but as far as like major updates, the iPhone 14 Pro Max will have you covered. And that is if you plan on keeping your phone for a long time. Nowadays, I don't know what's the average length that someone keeps their phone, but I feel like it's right around 2 to 3 years. So in that case, both of them will cover you with OS support for a long time. All right, so now let's talk about cameras. And here, honestly, it's very similar. They're both very good in their own separate ways sometimes, but I think whichever one you get, you're going to be getting a very good camera system here. So with the Pixel, you're going to get more of a vibrant shot all around. So regardless of what the situation is, most of the time it'll be just a little bit brighter and maybe just a little bit more vibrant compared to the iPhone. The iPhone does have the ability to switch up their photographic styles to match the Pixel, but I just keep it on standard and it ends up being more on the natural side. Sometimes it does look a little bit vibrant, a little bit more on the brighter side too. So sometimes it can be a little bit more brighter than the Pixel itself, but I just prefer the colors of the Pixel. It's not natural, but it just looks so vibrant. The sky is very blue. The greens are very green. Just colors just pop at you, and I really, really like it. But of course, both of them are actually very well detailed in my opinion. You get a very good amount of detail on all three lenses, whichever one you're using. I think all of them look very good. Now, specific stuff with the ultra wide on the iPhone, you are able to get a little bit closer to a subject, and it's much easier to autofocus on something with the ultra wide's autofocus. This is new to the Pixel 7 Pro, where it does have the ability to focus on stuff, but I felt like it lacked a little bit of ease of use. Like it just felt like it wasn't focusing on stuff sometimes. Sometimes I would get out of focus shots and whatnot. There was one point where both devices just struggled terribly with the focus. It couldn't focus on this one flower, but besides that, the focus was pretty good on both, but I would give it the ultra wide's autofocus just a little bit better of a rating because it was easier to use and it can get closer to a subject. The other noticeable difference is the telephotos. So on the iPhone, you do have a 3x optical zoom versus on the Pixel, you do have a 5x optical zoom. So right there, you can note that the optical zoom will be better on the Pixel. But the one thing I noticed too is that on the Pixel, the color shifted a lot more compared to the other lenses. So the main and the ultra wide of the Pixel were a little bit different in color compared to the Pixel's telephoto, which to me looked a little bit on the cooler / bluer tinted style. On the iPhone, while it didn't zoom in as far, it definitely stayed consistent in the colors from the ultra wide, the wide, and the telephoto. Now, as far as like digital zoom and trying to zoom in as far as you can, on the iPhone, you cap out at 15x versus on the Pixel 7 Pro, can go double that and go to 30x. So when you look at them, you can definitely zoom in a lot further on the Pixel 7 Pro. But again, when will you do that? I'm not sure. Is it worth it? It's up to you to decide that. If you love zooming in very far, then that's going to be a cool feature for you to have, that you can zoom in a little bit further. Definitely no 100x that the Samsung devices have or other devices have, but it's still better zoom than the iPhone 14 Pro Max has. But overall, with the back camera shots, I think it'll come down to your own personal preferences. I think photos look really good on both of them, but I prefer the colors of the Pixel, those vibrant shots. It's like it edited for you and you don't have to worry about editing. You can just post it how it is. But of course, if you prefer a natural look, then you're gonna like the iPhones. But either way, both of them take really good detailed shots and for the most part, good looking shot. In low light situations, I would give the edge to the Pixel. I think it does a better job of, one, allowing you to set the timer for how long you want the exposure to be to 6 seconds or 5 seconds, I believe, so it can bring in a lot more light, and that makes the photo just end up looking a lot brighter and a lot more detailed and better, in my opinion. Both front selfies are very good. Again, it's going to be different in the color, where the Pixel will take a more vibrant color looking shot versus the iPhone is more on the natural looking shot. But I do notice that the iPhones definitely look a little bit more detailed, in my opinion. But for some reason, I prefer the skin color of the Pixel. I think it's just because it's vibrant. It looks more popped out at me. My skin color pops a little bit more. Maybe that's why I like it. But either way, I think both take really good selfies. And on the iPhone, you are able to get closer to a subject. So if you plan on getting closer to your face, or in my case, I got closer to a plant. So it focused on the plant or whatever else was in front of you over what was behind you. So the, I guess, focal length or focal distance, which much better because it has autofocus on the iPhone versus not on the Pixel. So I think that's pretty cool as well. And when you switch to video, on the front, again, it's similar to how it was on photos, where the Pixel looked a little bit more vibrant and a little bit less detailed compared to the iPhone. The iPhone was able just to get a little bit more detailed, and it looked more on the natural side. And again, if you get close to some kind of subject, or if there's a subject in front of your face, it'll focus on that subject instead of actually your face. So it adds a little bit of depth to the video, which can be kind of cool. And then when you switch to the back, again, the video will be very good on both of them. In my opinion, at least, I feel like I'd be fine on either or, but it will depend on which color you prefer. So the iPhone, again, similar to how it was in the photos, because of the photographic style I have selected, which in this case it's standard, it did look a little bit more natural compared to the Pixel 7 Pro that was, again, more on the more vibrant side. But I did notice that sometimes they looked exactly the same. Like, there was very little difference, maybe a little bit of difference in detail or color again, but honestly, they're both really good. I honestly don't have any complaints on either. Again, you can get into the specifics of like the ultra wide, where the ultra wide it can actually get a little bit closer to a subject and focus better on a subject on the iPhone. But both of them are 0.5x's on the ultra wide. Forgot to mention that for photos. So that means that both of them will give you a great field of view to get a good landscape shot of some sort. So that's really nice. And again, when you switch to the telephoto, the iPhone is capped out at a 3x optical versus 5x optical on the Pixel 7 Pro. So you can get further and get a pretty good quality video shot on both of them. But again, the Pixel 7 Pro's color shifts a little bit from the ultra wide / wide to the telephoto, versus on the iPhone, it stays pretty consistent in its color. And the maxed out zoom you can get is 9x on the iPhone versus 20x on the Pixel. So that's, again, pretty much double the zoom capability. So it will depend on whether or not you do that or not. But I will say 9x versus like 10x on the Pixel, they both look really good in my opinion. I mean, I wouldn't say really good, but very comparable, I should say. So they compare pretty easily. So honestly, it will depend on whether you use this or not and whether it's a benefit to you or not. So think about it. Is it useful to you? If not, then it really doesn't matter. I also tried out other special features that both of them have, such as the action mode / active stabilization mode. So both of them do a pretty decent job of really stabilizing the video really well. Of course, you can see the difference in the color. I already mentioned how one's more vibrant than the other, and the iPhone's more natural. But the iPhone's able to get a 2.8K quality video versus the Pixel is stuck at 1080p. So if you want to use that action mode, you will get a higher quality video on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I also tried out cinematic mode on both of them. I am not a fan of it. I mean, it does look cinematic. I tried it out on a fence. And yeah, it does a decent job. I would say better on the iPhone to add that artificial bokeh effect, artificial blur effect. I guess it's kind of gimmicky in my opinion, but the plus side on the iPhone, not only does it look, I think, a little bit better with the blur effect, but it's also in 4K versus 1080p on the Pixel. I'm never going to use this feature, but if you wanted to, you can. So both of them end up taking really good photos and really good videos for the most part, but I would still give the edge to the iPhone just because it was simpler to use and easier to use. I found myself having to retake a couple of photos on the Pixel more often than on the iPhone. I would literally just whip it out, take a quick shot, and I was good. On the Pixel, the focusing issue with the ultra wide was one of the annoying things. Same with the telephoto, sometimes the focus was a little bit off. So I found myself having to retake a couple photos on the Pixel versus on the iPhone. It was just point and shoot. But for the most part, once you take the good photo or get the shot you want, both of them are going to look really good, and it's going to come down to your own personal taste and personal preference. But besides that, that's pretty much it on cameras. Both of them are honestly really good. So when it comes to the battery life, the iPhone does have a slightly smaller battery at I think about a 4,323 milliamp hour battery versus the Pixel that has about a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. But the iPhone does have better optimization with the chip and the software and whatnot, so that kind of balances itself out. So in real life usage and experience, I think both of them give me good battery life. So I would say the iPhone still slightly beats out the Pixel by a little bit as far as how long it can last and also the standby time, but for the most part, I can get through the whole day with no problem on both of them. During my week, I'm usually working, so I only get about 2 to 3 hours screen on time, which ends up leading to a whole day's worth of battery for me. On the weekends, I get maybe 3 to 5 hours screen on time, so I end up getting just about a day's worth of battery life. So with the Pixel on during the week, 24-hour cycle, charge in the morning, don't have to charge again so the next morning when I'm good. On the iPhone, same story, but sometimes better, so I'll charge in the morning and then I'll have to charge till about midday the next day. And then during the weekends, I end up having to charge both of them overnight. So for the most part, I would say good battery life for me. As far as the charging speeds though, both of them take quite a long time, that being about an hour and a half to about an hour and 45 minutes. Both of them do claim to have fast charging at like 25 or 20 watts or 30 watts, whatever it is. It's pretty slow charging. I think both of them take quite a while to charge up. It's a good thing that they both have decent battery life, or else this would suck for battery. But yeah, they definitely could improve the battery charging speeds. And both of them have wireless charging, and the Pixel does have reverse wireless charging, so you can power share and charge other devices. I've never used this on any of my devices, so this is definitely one of those gimmicky features because I've never used it before in real world usage. And one thing I do want to mention is that the Pixel's adaptive charging with my G wireless charger, this being a Samsung wireless charger trio, just sucks. I thought over time it would learn that at night if I'm charging wirelessly to trickle charge it so that's fully charged by the morning, but it doesn't learn. I always wake up with like a 70%, sometimes 40% battery charge. Sometimes I see like no difference. So I'm like, what's the point? So I always turn off adaptive charging because I always use my wireless charger when I want to charge overnight. So at the end of the day, which one should you get? The iPhone 14 Pro Max or the Pixel 7 Pro? Usually I say it depends on what you have right now, but forget what you have. Forget you have an iPhone, forget you have a Samsung, forget you have some kind of Pixel, whatever you have, forget you have it. Which one between these two right now, head to head, which one do I think is the better buy? I would go with the Pixel 7 Pro. I think it's just a little bit weaker in some areas, but overall, for the average person such as myself, this is a better phone. It just has better phone features and it gets the job done in pretty much every aspect in camera, battery life, software, all those special features, the performance. It just gets the job done even at a cheaper price. I personally have the 256GB model with both of them. So the iPhone costs about $1,200 for the model I have, and then this Pixel 7 Pro costs $1,000. So $200 cheaper, that's a bonus. But I also want to mention that I have the unlocked model for both of them because I have an MVNO carrier, whatever it's called. I don't have a major carrier. So if you have a major carrier, usually you get pretty good trade-in deals or promotions or whatever on either devices. But if you get the unlocked devices with the iPhone, I had to pay that full $1,200. Like I just had to pay it. Versus on the Pixel 7 Pro, I was able to trade in my Pixel 6 Pro plus get a free $200 gift card on top of that, which means I ended up spending maybe $600 or so on the Pixel 7 Pro. I think about $500 actually to be exact, but still, that's a very good price compared to $1,200. That's nearly half the price, which is making me regret buying the iPhone because this is such a good price, especially for the price that I paid. Now, if you don't have those kind of trade-in benefits, I still think saving $200 is much nicer than not saving $200, because you can use those $200 to buy, I don't know, a watch or some pair of earbuds to build your ecosystem or something like that. I don't know. While the iPhone may be a better, slightly more powerful device in some areas such as performance and battery and stuff, like it's very slightly more powerful, but I don't think it's worth it to get this phone when you can save some money and get the Pixel 7 Pro. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think between these two devices? Let me know your comments, your thoughts, your questions, and otherwise, that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed.